Have you ever looked at a picture of Easter Island, with its rows of stone giants gazing endlessly toward the horizon, and felt a strange chill run down your spine, as if those massive faces were not just carved rock, but silent guardians watching you back? Tonight, you and I are going to step into that mystery together. But before we set sail into this story, I am going to ask you for a little favor. Take just a moment to like this video. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from, whether it is your bedroom, your car on a late-night drive, or maybe even under the covers with headphones, and do not forget to subscribe. That way, you will always have a seat reserved in this circle of midnight tales. Only do it if you are truly ready, because once you cross the threshold into this world, there is no going back. The island is waiting for you, and it does not let go easily. Now, close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You are drifting on the Pacific Ocean, alone, surrounded by endless waves. The night sky stretches above you like an ocean of stars, brighter than any city skyline could ever allow. The waves carry you towards something that seems, at first, like nothing more than a shadow on the horizon. But as you drift closer, you see the jagged outline of cliffs, the whisper of palm trees swaying in the wind, and then those faces, enormous, solemn, unmoving, yet somehow alive. Easter Island, known to its people as Rapa Nui. This island is one of the most isolated inhabited places on Earth. Thousands of miles from any continent, it feels like the world's best kept secret, a treasure chest locked away by the sea itself. Imagine stepping onto its volcanic soil for the first time. The air smells of salt and earth. The ground is black and red from ancient eruptions, and silence presses down on you until the only sound you hear is the beating of your own heart. Then you look up, and dozens, no hundreds, of statues tower above you, their backs to the island, their eyes fixed firmly on the endless sea. What are they guarding? Who are they watching for? Or who are they watching against? The truth is, no one knows for certain. And that is what makes this island feel less like a tourist destination and more like a portal to another dimension. Tonight, as you listen, you will not just learn about stone statues and forgotten rituals. You will walk alongside the ancient islanders. Feel their triumphs, their fears, and their secrets whispering in your ear. You will laugh when the absurdity of human imagination meets the raw power of nature. And you will shiver when the shadows grow long and the waves echo like drums against the cliffs. Let me ask you this: if you were one of the first sailors to ever stumble upon this land, paddling for weeks across the ocean in a wooden canoe, what would you think when you saw those colossal faces rising from the ground? Would you fall to your knees and worship them as gods, or would you sprint the other way, muttering, "Nope, nope, nope," like any sensible person avoiding a horror movie cliche? Either way, you would not forget it. No one ever does. But here's the thing: the statues are just the surface. Easter Island is like a puzzle box. The more you open it, the stranger it becomes. Beneath the mystery of how the statues were carved and moved lies an even deeper question. Why build them at all? Why dedicate centuries of labor to monuments so massive that moving them seems impossible? And perhaps the most haunting question of all, what price did the islanders pay for their devotion to stone? As you let these questions swirl in your mind, picture yourself walking the island at night. The moonlight spills across the land, stretching shadows of the Moai statues until they look like giants, stepping out of the ground. The ocean roars, but every once in a while, you hear something else, something that sounds almost like whispers in a language you cannot understand. You turn, but there is no one there, just another statue, staring straight past you into the dark horizon. Your pulse quickens, and suddenly you realize you are not just standing on an island. You are standing inside a story that has been alive for centuries, waiting for you to listen. So, as you settle in tonight, let the sound of the waves guide you. Let the eyes of the statues remind you that you are a guest in a land that belongs to shadows, gods, and forgotten ancestors. Keep your curiosity alive, but keep your guard up too. You never know what truths or what tricks might reveal themselves when the night deepens. The journey does not begin with answers. It begins with questions. And those questions, like the statues themselves, are carved into the very soul of Easter Island. Imagine yourself thousands of years ago, on a fragile canoe carved from a single tree trunk, drifting across a seemingly endless ocean. The sky above is wide and merciless, the sun beating down on your skin by day, the stars so sharp and infinite by night that you wonder if you have somehow left Earth altogether. This is not a vacation cruise. This is survival. You are part of a Polynesian people who believe the ocean is not a barrier but a highway, a vast blue path connecting islands like stepping stones scattered by the gods. For weeks, maybe months, you paddle and sail, guided by stars, wind, and instinct. Food grows scarce. Thirst burns your throat. And then, one morning, land appears on the horizon, jagged cliffs, waves crashing against volcanic rock. You and your people have found a place no one else has ever claimed. You name it Rapa Nui. The arrival of these early settlers is one of the most remarkable stories of human migration. Picture it, without compasses, without GPS, without even a decent snack bar on board, they set out into nothingness, trusting that something would be there. And somehow there was. Modern scientists still marvel at their navigational skills. They read the stars like a book, the waves like a map, and the birds as living signposts. If you tried it today, you would probably end up lost halfway to nowhere, frantically Googling nearest Starbucks while the ocean laughed at you. But to these explorers, the sea was alive. It whispered, it sang, it guided. When they reached Rapa Nui, they were not just survivors, they were pioneers standing on the edge of a brand new world. Imagine stepping onto that black volcanic soil, planting your foot where no human foot had ever left a print before. The silence of the island greets you like a blank canvas. What do you paint onto it? Houses, rituals, gods carved into stone, or maybe just a hammock and a coconut drink if you are the lazy type. And so, the seeds of civilization were planted. A society that would later astonish the world with feats of artistry and mystery began with a handful of sailors bold enough to chase the horizon. Their courage built the foundation for everything that followed, from the towering Moai statues to the myths that still echo across the waves. Life on Rapa Nui was not easy. Imagine an island barely 15 miles long, isolated by thousands of miles of ocean. No trading ships, no supply drops. No Amazon Prime to deliver coconuts. Just you, your people, and the resources of the land. And yet, from this isolation, a complex society grew. The early settlers built villages of stone houses shaped like overturned boats. They cultivated sweet potatoes, bananas, and sugarcane, surviving where others might have starved. They raised chickens, fished the endless ocean, and adapted to the harsh winds that whipped across the island. In their isolation, they created something unique, a culture infused with ritual, myth, and reverence for their ancestors. At the heart of this culture was a worldview that saw the divine in everything: stones, trees, waves, even the very soil. The people believed their chiefs carried sacred power, called mana, a force connecting humans to gods. To honor their leaders and their ancestors, they began carving the colossal statues we now call Moai. These were not just art. They were spiritual batteries, vessels of mana, watching over the living and the dead. Imagine living in such a world. Every meal you ate, every tool you made, every ritual you performed, carried meaning. Even a simple fishing trip was not just about catching dinner. It was about appeasing the ocean, asking permission from unseen forces. It might sound exhausting compared to modern life, but think about it. In their world, nothing was meaningless. Everything tied back to a greater story. Of course, humans being humans, not every day was about sacred rituals. There were also squabbles over land, family dramas, and, I am sure, the ancient equivalent of someone hogging the last piece of roasted chicken. But beneath it all, there was a shared belief that the community existed under the watchful eyes of ancestors turned to stone. And this belief gave them purpose. It drove them to carve, to build, to endure. Little by little, the society of Rapa Nui shaped itself into something strong enough to survive centuries in one of the most remote corners of Earth. Now, let us talk about the stars of the show, the Moai. If Easter Island were a movie, the Moai would be its leading actors, tall, mysterious, and stubbornly silent no matter how many questions you ask. They stand anywhere from 13 feet to over 30 feet tall, weighing up to 80 tons. That is about the same as a fully loaded Boeing 737, minus the in-flight peanuts. Carved from volcanic tuff, a relatively soft stone, the Moai were shaped with stone tools, slowly chipped away over months or even years. Picture the scene, dozens of craftsmen hammering at a mountainside, carving out a giant face from the rock. Sparks fly, dust clouds rise, chants echo through the air. And when the figure is finally freed from the earth, the people celebrate, not just because they finished a project, but because they believe they have given stone a soul. But here's where things get strange. The Moai are not just heads, as many people think from photographs. Most of them actually have torsos buried beneath the ground, some stretching several meters below the surface. Imagine realizing that what looked like a giant head was actually a full body all along. Like discovering your garden gnome has been standing in quicksand for centuries. The expressions on their faces are equally captivating. Calm, stoic, with lips pressed tight as if holding onto secrets they will never reveal. Were they meant to intimidate enemies, to comfort the people, or maybe they are just perpetually annoyed that someone forgot to give them arms? Scientists believe the Moai represented deified ancestors, channeling sacred mana to protect the living. But standing before them in person, many visitors describe something more, an almost electric sense of presence, as if the statues are aware of you. One tourist once joked that the Moai gave them the same feeling as walking into a party where you do not know anyone. Everybody staring, nobody talking. Creepy, but unforgettable. What cannot be denied is the dedication it took to build them. Imagine carving hundreds of these giants with nothing but stone tools, hauling them across miles of rugged terrain, and erecting them on ceremonial platforms called ahu. No machines, no cranes, just raw human will, teamwork, and maybe a few too many arguments about which way should the statue face. These Moai are more than stone. They are the heartbeat of Rapa Nui, silent yet endlessly speaking, still guarding the island centuries after the people who built them have passed into history. If carving the Moai was astonishing, moving them was the real miracle. Imagine this: you have just finished sculpting an 80-ton statue out of volcanic rock. It is taller than your house, heavier than 10 buses, and you need to move it several miles across hills, valleys, and cliffs. No wheels, no steel cranes, no diesel trucks. Just rope, wood, muscle, and perhaps a little divine inspiration. Easy, right? For centuries, people argued about how the Rapa Nui managed this feat. Some thought they used massive wooden sledges, dragging the statues on rollers. Others suggested they laid the statues flat on log rails, inching them forward like giant stone caterpillars. But here's the twist: the island was nearly deforested centuries ago, raising doubts about how much wood they even had to spare. In the 1980s, researchers tried a bold experiment. They built replica statues and attempted to move them using teams of people with ropes. To their surprise, when pulled in a rocking motion, left, right, the statue began to walk. Imagine a 15-foot stone giant wobbling down a dirt road like a drunk uncle at a wedding. It was slow, terrifying, and yet strangely elegant. Local oral traditions even described the Moai as having walked to their places. Maybe the ancestors were not exaggerating after all. But think of the coordination required. Dozens of people pulling in perfect rhythm, chanting to keep time, muscles straining with every tug. One mistake and the statue could topple, shattering years of work. It is not just engineering, it is theater, ritual, and community effort rolled into one. Some researchers still believe other methods were used, perhaps ropes and levers, or even a combination of dragging and walking. And of course, the inevitable theories of alien technology show up, because what is an ancient mystery without a spaceship or two? Personally, if aliens had come all this way, I would like to think they would leave something more exciting than oversized stone heads. Maybe a pizza recipe that does not burn at 425 degrees. Regardless of the method, the achievement is staggering. Hundreds of Moai were moved across the island and placed on ceremonial platforms, facing inward toward the villages as if watching over their people. Each one represents not only artistry but teamwork, persistence, and the willingness of a society to unite under a shared vision. So the next time you complain about carrying groceries from your car to your kitchen, remember the Rapa Nui moved 80 tons of volcanic stone with nothing but ropes, sweat, and determination. Suddenly that bag of potatoes does not seem so heavy anymore. When night falls on Easter Island, the statues take on a different life. By day they are monuments, silent, stoic, almost approachable. But under moonlight, they transform. Shadows stretch across the ground. Their faces seem sharper, their eyes more piercing, and suddenly you understand why generations of islanders whispered stories about spirits and ghosts. Imagine camping on the island centuries ago. A fire flickers, waves crash against the shore, and the silhouettes of Moai loom against the stars. The elders gather children close and begin to tell tales. They speak of restless spirits wandering the night, of ancestors who rise from stone to walk among the living. The Moai, they say, are not merely statues but vessels, guardians holding the souls of chiefs, keeping watch even after death. One legend tells of spirits that would punish those who disrespected the statues, break a taboo, mock the ancestors, or walk carelessly across sacred ground. And you might feel icy fingers brushing your neck. Others warned of voices in the wind, soft whispers that lured wanderers away from their huts into the darkness, never to return. Of course, modern visitors sometimes report similar experiences. Some say they have felt watched, even when standing alone among the statues. A few swear they have heard low murmurs carried on the breeze, like conversations in a language they could not recognize. Skeptics dismiss it as imagination, wind patterns, or maybe just the side effect of one too many glasses of Chilean wine. Still, the stories persist. And let us be honest, who would not feel a little spooked? Standing in a field surrounded by dozens of towering stone faces at midnight is basically the setup for every horror movie ever. All that is missing is a flashlight that mysteriously goes out at the worst possible moment. But for the Rapa Nui, these stories were not about fear, they were about respect. The islanders lived with the presence of their ancestors all around them. The Moai were reminders that the dead never truly leave, that the line between the living and the spirit world is thin, especially under the glow of the moon. So if you ever visit, and you find yourself alone at night, listening to the waves and watching shadows dance across ancient stone, ask yourself, are you imagining things? Or are the ancestors whispering to you? Easter Island is not only about statues, it is also a land of gods, myths, and legends, most of them tied to the sea. The ocean was both friend and foe, provider and destroyer. For the Rapa Nui, the waves were alive, and behind them stood powerful beings who demanded respect. At the center of their mythology was Makemake, the creator god. He was said to have brought the first humans to the island, shaping them from clay and breathing life into them. Imagine standing on a windswept cliff, waves exploding below, and hearing the priests chant stories of Makemake as the sun rose from the horizon. To the islanders, every sunrise was his blessing, every storm his warning. Other gods and spirits filled the pantheon. Some were tied to fertility, ensuring crops would grow and families would prosper. Others were guardians of the sea, guiding fishermen and protecting canoes from disaster. But like all mythologies, these gods could be fickle. If disrespected, they could unleash hunger, drought, or disease. The ocean was especially sacred. To venture out onto it was to enter the domain of the gods, a gamble of courage and humility. Fishermen performed rituals before every journey, offering chants, carvings, or even small sacrifices to ensure safe passage. To outsiders, it might sound like superstition, but to the Rapa Nui, it was common sense. Would you step into the boss's office without knocking first? Of course not. Makemake's influence also extended into rituals like the Birdman cult, which we will explore later. His presence was everywhere, woven into carvings, chants, and even the very layout of ceremonial sites. To live on Rapa Nui was to live in constant dialogue with gods, ancestors, and spirits of the sea. And maybe that is the secret to their endurance. When you believe that every wave carries a god's whisper, every stone holds an ancestor's gaze, and every sunrise marks the hand of a creator, life becomes more than survival, it becomes a sacred performance. If myths and legends give Easter Island its soul, then archaeology gives it a voice. For centuries, the island seemed like a riddle written in stone. But every shovel of dirt, every unearthed artifact, tells us a little more about the people who lived there. Imagine an archaeologist crouched in the blazing sun, brushing soil from a fragment of obsidian. That shard once formed the tip of a spear or a carving tool. In another trench, bones of fish and chickens are carefully catalogued, showing how the Rapa Nui balanced farming with the bounty of the ocean. Each find is like a breadcrumb leading back through time. One of the most fascinating discoveries lies beneath the very statues themselves. Many Moai are buried up to their shoulders, and when excavated, researchers found intricate carvings etched into their hidden torsos, patterns of sacred symbols, perhaps prayers or family lineages. What does it say about a people who carved details they knew would remain hidden for centuries? That devotion, that willingness to honor the unseen, is breathtaking. Archaeologists also uncovered remnants of stone platforms called ahu. These ceremonial stages were carefully constructed with multi-ton stones, fitted together without mortar. The precision is so high that some stones interlock like puzzle pieces, a skill echoing ancient builders in faraway places like Peru and Egypt. Was this coincidence, or a sign of shared ingenuity across civilizations separated by oceans? Another clue comes from tools found in quarries. Basalt picks, hammerstones, and chisels lay scattered, as if workers set them down for a meal and never returned. These tools confirm that the Moai were not miracles of alien technology but masterpieces of human persistence. And yet, the sheer scale still leaves you shaking your head in disbelief. Beyond statues and tools, archaeologists study pollen trapped in soil layers. These microscopic grains reveal that the island was once covered in towering palm trees. Over time, deforestation stripped the land, reshaping its ecology and sealing the fate of its society. Science does not erase the mystery, it sharpens it. Each discovery answers one question and raises three more. You hold a piece of bone and wonder about the person it belonged to. You trace carvings on stone and wonder what prayers they whispered into the wind. Through archaeology, the island whispers across centuries, reminding us that every civilization leaves footprints, even on the loneliest of shores. For every great civilization, there comes a moment of crisis. On Rapa Nui, that crisis was ecological collapse. Imagine an island once thick with giant palm forests, birds filling the skies, fertile soil ready to yield crops. Over generations, trees were felled for canoes, houses, firewood, and most dramatically, for moving Moai. The more statues they built, the more resources they consumed. Slowly, the landscape changed. Without trees, the soil eroded, crops withered, birds vanished. Canoes could no longer be built large enough to venture far into the ocean. The people had cut away the very foundation of their survival. By the time Europeans arrived in the 18th century, the island was nearly barren. Accounts describe a land stripped of tall trees, its people struggling to feed themselves. Oral traditions recall wars between clans, battles fought with obsidian-tipped spears. In some stories, rival groups toppled each other's statues, acts of both vengeance and despair. Archaeological evidence supports this collapse. Layers of soil show sudden drops in tree pollen. Charred bones hint at desperate meals. Some skeletons even show signs of violence, scars of civil conflict. It is a sobering reminder, when resources vanish, unity often crumbles with them. But let us pause before painting a purely tragic picture. Some researchers argue that the Rapa Nui adapted, developing new farming techniques like rock gardens to retain soil moisture. Others suggest that while deforestation was severe, it was not the sole cause of decline. Diseases brought by outsiders, slave raids, and colonial exploitation also devastated the island's population. Still, the image of a people who may have toppled their own society through overuse of resources is haunting. It resonates today when our world faces its own ecological crises. The question lingers, are we repeating Rapa Nui's mistake, cutting down forests and consuming resources faster than nature can renew them? So the next time you see a Moai standing tall, remember not only the ingenuity of its builders but also the cost. Those statues are not just monuments of pride, they may also be monuments of warning. When the Moai era waned, a new ritual rose to dominate the island's spiritual life, the Birdman cult, or Tangata Manu. If the Moai were about ancestors, the Birdman was about power, raw, dangerous, and often deadly. Picture the scene. Each year, rival chiefs gathered at the cliffs of Orongo, a ceremonial village perched high above the crashing sea. From here, they gazed toward a small islet called Motu Nui. The challenge: send a champion down the cliffs, across shark-infested waters, to retrieve the first egg of the sacred Sudi-turned bird. The chief whose warrior succeeded would become Tangata Manu, the Birdman, and hold supreme authority for the year. It was not a casual game. Climbing down sheer cliffs, swimming through violent waves, braving sharks and currents, this was survival at its rawest. Imagine being the chosen one. The crowd chants your name as you cling to jagged rocks, your hands bleeding, waves smashing against your body. You reach the islet, wait for the birds to lay, then clutch the fragile egg to your chest. Now comes the return journey, even more perilous. One slip, one crack, and it is all over. When the victor finally climbed back with the egg intact, the island erupted in celebration. The chief he represented would gain divine authority, his words carrying the weight of Make himself. For the loser, sometimes death, sometimes humiliation, always risk. To us, it sounds like an extreme sport crossed with political elections. Imagine if modern politicians had to win office by sending interns to fetch eagle eggs from the Grand Canyon. Congress would look very different. But beneath the spectacle, the Birdman ritual reflected deep beliefs. The egg symbolized renewal, fertility, the connection between gods and men. To hold it unbroken was to hold the future of the island. The cult of Tangata Manu lasted for centuries, reshaping the island's politics and religion. Today, the ruins of Orongo still stand, its stone houses overlooking the ocean, silent witnesses to the bravery, madness, and faith of those who once risked everything for an egg. If you were to take a globe and place your finger on Easter Island, you would quickly notice something striking. There is nothing around it. Thousands of miles of ocean in every direction, no neighboring islands within sight, no continent waiting just over the horizon. Rapa Nui is one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. This isolation shaped every part of life. Imagine waking up on an island where your entire world is defined by the horizon. There is no news from abroad, no traders bringing foreign goods, no distant armies to fear or to rescue you. The island is your entire universe. Everything you need, everything you fear, everything you hope for must come from within these few square miles of volcanic soil. For the Rapa Nui, this isolation was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it allowed them to create a unique culture untouched by outside influence for centuries. Their rituals, their language, their art, all blossomed in a vacuum, like a rare flower growing in the middle of a desert. On the other hand, it meant that when resources dwindled, there was no backup plan, no neighbors to trade with, no escape routes. Imagine yourself as one of the early settlers, standing on a cliff and staring at the endless blue. Days blur into months, months into years. The ocean becomes both a friend and a prison. Sometimes you might dream of setting sail again, chasing the horizon in search of other lands. But then you look back at the statues, at your family, at the fields you have planted, and you realize this is home. This is all there is. Modern visitors sometimes describe the same feeling. Standing on Rapa Nui, you become acutely aware of your smallness. The vast ocean stretches in all directions, a reminder that humanity is often at the mercy of nature. It is beautiful, but it is also humbling. You feel cut off from the noise of the modern world, yet more connected to the raw heartbeat of Earth itself. The island's isolation may explain why its mysteries feel so intense. When you are this far from everything, Every stone, every carving, every shadow takes on amplified meaning. In the silence, the Moai do not just watch the horizon, they seem to watch you. No great mystery is complete without aliens. From the pyramids of Egypt to the lines of Nazca, whenever humans encounter ancient feats of engineering they can't immediately explain, someone inevitably asks, could it have been extraterrestrials? Easter Island is no exception. According to some fringe theories, the Moai were not carved by human hands at all, but by visitors from the stars. The logic goes like this. How could a small, isolated society with primitive tools possibly carve and move statues weighing tens of tons? Surely they must have had help from beings with advanced technology. Flying saucers, anti-gravity beams, maybe even a galactic construction company working overtime. It sounds entertaining, but also a little unfair to the Rapa Nui. After all, experiments have shown that with enough teamwork, ropes, and ingenuity, humans could indeed move and raise these statues. The walking Moai experiment proved that no alien forklifts were required. Still, the idea persists, fueled by TV specials, conspiracy books, and late-night internet rabbit holes. And let us be honest, there is something fun about imagining a spaceship hovering above a quarry, beaming up chunks of volcanic stone while islanders scratch their heads. Or aliens arguing among themselves, I told you we should have gone to Mars, but no, you wanted giant heads in the Pacific. But maybe the alien theory tells us something deeper, not about extraterrestrials, but about ourselves. Sometimes we underestimate human creativity. When we see something extraordinary, we assume it must have been done by someone smarter, stronger, or from somewhere else. Yet time and again, archaeology shows that ancient peoples were clever, resourceful, and capable of feats we still struggle to replicate today. So while the alien theory makes for a good sci-fi bedtime story, the real mystery may be even more impressive: what humans can accomplish when driven by faith, community, and sheer determination. While myths and conspiracy theories capture imaginations, modern science seeks tangible answers. In recent decades, researchers have brought cutting-edge technology to Rapa Nui, peeling back layers of mystery one scan at a time. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed that many statues have hidden bodies buried deep in the earth. What once seemed like disembodied heads turned out to be full figures, some with carved symbols etched into their backs. This discovery shifted the world's perception of Moai, showing them not just as faces but as complete beings, rooted in both earth and spirit. DNA analysis of human remains has also provided clues. Studies suggest the Rapa Nui population came from Polynesian settlers, with possible contacts across the Pacific. Some genetic traces even hint at contact with South America before Europeans arrived, raising tantalizing questions. Did ancient voyagers sail thousands of miles between continents? Did sweet potatoes, a South American crop, find their way to Polynesia through these exchanges? Satellite imagery and drone surveys have mapped the island's landscape, revealing patterns of agriculture previously unseen. Stone gardens designed to trap moisture and protect crops highlight the ingenuity of the Rapa Nui, challenging the old stereotype that their society simply collapsed due to ecocide. Instead, it appears they fought hard to adapt, using every tool available to survive. Even 3D modeling has entered the field. Digital reconstructions of Moai help us visualize how they were carved, moved, and erected. One project even simulated how statues might have been toppled during clan conflicts, turning history into a virtual laboratory. Modern science does not strip the island of wonder. If anything, it deepens it. The more we uncover, the more respect we gain for the Rapa Nui. They were not passive victims of fate, nor clueless islanders overwhelmed by their own ambition. They were survivors, innovators, and storytellers whose legacy still speaks through stone. So while aliens make good headlines, it is science that gives us the real magic, the magic of uncovering truths that lay hidden for centuries. Truths carved not by extraterrestrials, but by human hands guided by vision and belief. For centuries, the world thought the Moai were just heads sticking out of the ground. Tourists took photos of those stoic faces rising from grassy hills, imagining them as disembodied guardians staring into eternity. But in the last few decades, Excavations revealed a startling truth. Most of these statues have bodies buried deep beneath the soil. Imagine the shock of brushing away dirt only to discover shoulders, torsos, even hands folded across bellies, carved with intricate patterns. Suddenly, the Moai were no longer mere heads. They were complete beings, rooted in the earth like ancient trees. It was as if the island itself had been keeping a secret, covering its children in a blanket of soil for centuries. Archaeologists found that the statues' backs were covered in carvings, symbols of birds, waves, and sacred motifs. Some believe these represented prayers, genealogies, or cosmic alignments. They were details never meant to be seen by casual eyes, hidden offerings between the carvers and the gods. But the underground mysteries do not stop there. The island is riddled with caves, some formed by volcanic activity, others dug by human hands. In these caverns, explorers have found petroglyphs, stone tools, and even bones. Some caves were used as shelters during times of war, others as burial chambers, places where the living and the dead existed side by side. Imagine entering one of these caves with only a torch. The air is cool, damp, heavy with silence. Symbols etched into the walls flicker in the firelight, and shadows stretch like spirits across the stone. For the Rapa Nui, these underground spaces were not just shelters, they were thresholds between worlds. Even today, many of the caves remain unexplored, blocked by rockfalls or too narrow for safe entry. Who knows what relics, what forgotten whispers, still lie beneath the surface. Perhaps new discoveries will rewrite what we think we know, reminding us that Easter Island's greatest secrets are not always in plain sight, but hidden beneath our feet. Picture this: the sun has set, and the island is bathed in silver light. The moon climbs high, casting a glow that transforms every stone, every wave, every shadow. The Moai stand taller than ever under this light, their eyes catching the pale gleam, their profiles sharp against the sky. Walking along the coast at night, you hear the rhythmic crash of waves, the cry of seabirds carried on the wind, and the whisper of grass brushing against stone. The air is cooler, the silence deeper, broken only by the steady heartbeat of the ocean. In moments like this, it feels less like you are walking on Earth and more like you have stepped into a dream. For the Rapa Nui, the moon was sacred. It guided planting cycles, marked time, and carried spiritual meaning. Ceremonies were often timed with lunar phases, and stories spoke of ancestors who appeared in moonlight to watch over their descendants. Imagine looking up at the glowing orb above, believing that your grandparents' spirits were walking in its light. Even today, visitors describe the experience as surreal. Some say the statues seem to move when the moonlight shifts, their shadows stretching across the grass like arms reaching for the sea. Others describe a calm so profound it feels supernatural, as if the island itself is holding its breath. Of course, humor creeps in too. One traveler joked that standing among the statues at night was like being at a giant silent party where everyone forgot the snacks. Creepy, yes. Memorable, absolutely. Moonlit nights remind us that mystery is not always about fear. Sometimes it is about awe, about the quiet beauty of the world when stripped of noise and distraction. On Easter Island, the moon does not just shine. It transforms the land into a stage where history, myth, and imagination perform together in silence. Behind the grandeur of the Moai lies a darker story: conflict, rivalry, and eventual collapse. As resources dwindled and clans competed for dominance, the island descended into strife. The very statues that once symbolized unity became targets of destruction. Imagine two rival groups facing off on a windswept plain. One clan builds a towering Moai to honor their ancestors, asserting power and prestige. The other, envious and desperate, topples it in the dead of night, the thunder of stone crashing to earth echoing like a drum of war. Soon, retaliation follows, and statue after statue falls, leaving broken faces across the island. Archaeological evidence supports this tale. Many Moai were found lying face down, deliberately pulled from their platforms. Oral traditions speak of wars fought with obsidian-tipped weapons, of ambushes and massacres. The Birdman cult rose partly in response to this chaos, offering a new system of leadership after the Moai-centered order collapsed. It is easy to imagine the desperation. Food was scarce, trees gone, fish harder to catch. Clans once united by shared rituals turned against one another. And yet, even in violence, there was symbolism. To topple a statue was not only to attack an enemy's pride, it was to sever their link to ancestors, to strip them of spiritual power. The fall of the Moai was both physical and metaphorical. It marked the unraveling of a society stretched beyond its limits, and it left behind a haunting image. Giants lying in the dirt, faces pressed into the earth, silent witnesses to human pride and human failure. Yet, amid the tragedy, there is resilience. The people endured. They adapted new rituals, new forms of leadership, and continued to survive despite the scars of conflict. Their story is not only about collapse, it is about the eternal struggle of humanity to find balance between ambition and sustainability, unity and rivalry. If you stand today before a toppled Moai, the ground scarred where it fell, you can almost hear the echoes of that struggle. The statues are not just relics of glory, they are also tombstones of war. When we talk about Easter Island, it is easy to think of it only as a place of the past, a land of fallen statues, forgotten rituals, and long-gone ancestors. But Rapa Nui is not a ghost island. It is alive, inhabited, and deeply proud of its heritage. Today, around 8,000 people live on the island, many of them descendants of the original Rapa Nui. They speak both Spanish, brought during Chilean annexation, and the native Rapa Nui language, which has been preserved despite centuries of outside influence. Imagine walking through the town of Hangaroa, hearing conversations switch fluidly between languages, past and present mingling in every word. Life here is a blend of old and new. Tourists come to marvel at the Moai, bringing money that sustains the island's economy. Fishermen still cast nets into the Pacific, just as their ancestors did, though now with the help of outboard motors. Children go to schools that teach both modern science and ancestral traditions. Festivals showcase traditional dances, body paint, and chants that echo the rhythms of ancient rituals. But there are struggles too. The island's remoteness makes supplies expensive, jobs limited, and medical care difficult. Tourism brings prosperity, but also pressure. How do you preserve sacred sites when thousands of visitors walk among them each year? The people of Rapa Nui are constantly balancing the need for progress with the responsibility of protection. And yet, resilience shines through. Many locals see themselves as guardians of their ancestors' legacy. They do not simply live near the Moai. They live with them, honoring them as part of their identity. Some even describe the statues as family members, silent elders whose presence reminds them of who they are. So when you think of Easter Island, do not picture it only as a stage set for ancient mystery. Picture it as a living community, where children ride bikes under the shadows of statues, where families gather for Sunday barbecues with the ocean at their feet, and where the heartbeat of an ancient culture continues to pulse in modern times. Ask anyone who has visited Easter Island, and they will tell you the statues do not just stand there, they stare. There is something unsettling about walking among the Moai, especially when you are alone. Their eyes, though hollow, seem to follow you. Their silence is louder than words. Many tourists describe a strange sensation, as if being watched. Some laugh it off, calling it the world's weirdest staring contest. Others feel a genuine chill, their skin prickling as they wander through fields dotted with giants. At night, the feeling intensifies. The shadows lengthen, the wind carries whispers, and suddenly every sound makes you glance over your shoulder. Stories circulate of visitors having vivid dreams after spending time on the island, dreams of ancestors speaking in unknown languages, of statues moving when no one was looking, of the ocean calling them into its depths. Scientists dismiss these as the effects of suggestion, the power of expectation. But maybe, just maybe, the island works its way into your subconscious. There are lighter moments too. One traveler joked that they tried to take a selfie with a Moai but could not get the statue to smile. Another claimed the statues gave them the same look there. Mother gives when they say they will call but never do. Creepy, but relatable. Whether eerie or amusing, the experience leaves a mark. Easter Island is not just a place you visit. It is a place that visits you. Long after leaving, people say they still dream of the faces, still feel the weight of the silence. Perhaps that is the greatest power of the Moai. They are not only guardians of the Rapa Nui, they become guardians of your memory, haunting you in the best, strangest way possible. Easter Island may be small, but its statues have become global celebrities. From cartoons to video games, from movies to memes, the Moai appear everywhere. Often mysterious, sometimes hilarious, always unforgettable. Think of the iconic singing Moai heads in the film Night at the museum, or the blocky, wide-eyed statues that pop up in Japanese anime. Even video games like Animal Crossing feature Moai as quirky decorations. Somehow, these solemn guardians of Rapa Nui have been transformed into pop culture icons, stripped of context but loaded with charm. Why, maybe because their design is so simple yet powerful. The elongated faces, the heavy brows, the pursed lips, they are instantly recognizable. Even in parody, they are like the Mona Lisa of stone sculptures, serious, enigmatic, and oddly meme-able. Of course, this global fame is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brings attention to Rapa Nui, encouraging tourism and sparking curiosity about its history. On the other, it risks reducing a sacred heritage into a punchline. For the Rapa Nui people, the Moai are not just funny stone heads, they are ancestors, symbols of spiritual power. To see them turned into emojis or novelty garden statues can feel disrespectful. Still, the Moai's journey into pop culture shows their enduring impact. Few monuments manage to leap across centuries, oceans, and cultures with such force. They remind us that symbols are alive, that even out of context, they carry weight. So the next time you see a Moai plush toy or a cartoon version on TV, remember there is a real island with real people behind those faces. And maybe smile at the irony that statues carved to watch over ancestors now watch over shopping malls, video games, and TikTok feeds. Easter Island may feel isolated, but its mysteries often echo those of other ancient civilizations. Around the world, we find monuments built with staggering effort, aligned to stars and cloaked in myth. The pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge in England, Machu Picchu in Peru, each raises the same question. How did ancient peoples achieve so much with so little? Imagine traveling back in time, hopping from one site to another. In Egypt, you see workers dragging limestone blocks across the desert. In England, you watch druids lifting massive stones into precise circles. In Peru, you climb steep terraces carved into mountainsides, stones cut so perfectly they fit together without mortar. And then you stand on Rapa Nui gazing at Moai facing inland, as if guarding their villages. The similarities are uncanny. Monumental scale, astronomical alignments, ritual significance. Could there have been some shared knowledge, passed along by travelers across oceans, or are humans simply wired to dream big, to build monuments that anchor them to both earth and sky? Some researchers see connections in technique. The way stones interlock on Ahu platforms resembles Incan masonry. Sweet potatoes, native to South America, were cultivated on Rapa Nui long before Europeans arrived, hinting at possible transoceanic contact. Did Polynesians reach the Americas, or did South Americans sail westward? Either scenario would rewrite our understanding of ancient exploration. Others argue the similarities are coincidences. After all, humans everywhere face the same challenges: how to honor ancestors, how to mark sacred time, how to build with limited tools. Given enough determination, people often arrive at the same solutions. But here's the wonder: whether connected or independent, these monuments show a universal truth. Across continents and millennia, humans share the urge to leave something behind. Something massive, mysterious, and enduring. Easter Island is part of that global story, its statues standing shoulder to shoulder with pyramids and stone circles, each whispering the same message: we were here, we mattered, remember us. Even now, Easter Island continues to surprise us. New studies are constantly rewriting what we thought we knew. In recent years, archaeologists, geneticists, and geologists have teamed up to probe deeper into the island's secrets. One discovery came from studying the soil around statue platforms. Researchers found that the areas where Moai were erected were unusually fertile. Volcanic rock fragments, broken down over time, enriched the soil with minerals. This suggests that the statues were not only spiritual guardians but also practical symbols. Placed in locations where crops thrive, the Moai may have literally stood watch over the food supply. Genetic studies add another twist. DNA from ancient remains confirms Polynesian origins, but also hints at limited contact with South America before Europeans. The mystery deepens: did Polynesian sailors reach Chile's coast, or did South Americans cross the Pacific? Either way, it shows these ancient peoples were far more connected than once believed. Even technology sheds light. Using 3D scanning, researchers have documented previously unnoticed carvings on Moai, revealing new layers of symbolism. Satellite imaging maps show subtle alignments between statue groups, possibly marking seasonal changes or astronomical events. Suddenly, what looked like random placements become part of a larger, cosmic blueprint. And yet, for every answer, new questions arise. Why were some statues left unfinished in quarries? Why did certain clans stop building long before others? What role did shifting climate play in their decisions? The beauty of science is that it does not strip away wonder. Each discovery is like peeling back another layer of the island, revealing complexity beneath simplicity. Far from diminishing the mystery, modern research magnifies it, reminding us that history is never static. It is alive, growing, and still unfolding, even on an island at the edge of the world. Now let us play a little game of imagination. Suppose you, right now, found yourself stranded on Easter Island. No phone, no Wi-Fi, no flight out. Just you, the statues, and the endless Pacific. How would you survive a single night? The first thing you would notice is silence. Not city silence, but primal silence. The kind where the only sounds are waves, wind, and your own heartbeat. The Moai loom nearby, their shadows stretching under the moon. You might laugh nervously at first, but soon the weight of their presence presses down. Do you dare sleep while a dozen stone faces watch you? Let us be practical. Food, you would search for wild bananas, sweet potatoes, or maybe hope to catch a fish with improvised tools. Shelter, maybe a cave, but would you enter knowing the stories of spirits whispering inside? Fire, without matches, you would have to channel your inner survivalist, rubbing sticks together while muttering prayers to make that it actually works. And then comes the real question: fear. Not of hunger, not of cold, but of imagination. What if you hear whispers on the wind? What if the statues shift when you are not looking? What if you feel a hand on your shoulder and turn to find nothing there? Could you last the night without losing your mind? This thought experiment reveals why Easter Island captivates us. It is not just about history, it is about atmosphere. The Moai are not simply relics. They are actors in a stage play of the imagination. Stranded or not, anyone who visits becomes part of that story. So, if it were you, would you brave the caves, climb the cliffs, or curl up by a statue and hope for ancestral protection? Survival on Rapa Nui is not just about food and water. It is about courage in the face of mystery. Even after centuries of study, Easter Island refuses to give up all its secrets. For every question answered, a dozen more emerge. The Moai stand as stone riddles, their lips sealed, daring us to guess their purpose. One of the greatest mysteries is why they were built in such numbers. Over 800 statues dot the island, some towering, others half-finished in quarries. Was it competition between clans, each trying to outdo the other? Was it devotion to ancestors, an act of love carved in stone? Or was it desperation, an attempt to secure divine favor as resources dwindled? Then there is the question of the eyes. Some statues once had coral eyes with obsidian pupils, giving them an eerie, lifelike gaze. When those eyes were placed, did the statues wake up? Were they believed to actually see, to channel power from the spirit world into the community? Legends speak of mana, sacred energy flowing through chiefs and ancestors. Did the Moai act as conduits for this force? And if so, did their destruction in clan wars symbolize more than anger? Was it an attempt to literally break the spiritual backbone of rivals? Other mysteries linger underground. Hundreds of caves remain unexplored, sealed by time and danger. What relics wait in the dark? Forgotten scripts, sacred objects, proof of connections with distant lands. Theories abound, but until someone dares the shadows, they remain speculation. And then, of course, is the mystery of collapse. Did the Rapa Nui truly cause their own downfall, cutting every tree until their world crumbled? Or is that a myth imposed by outsiders, ignoring evidence of resilience and adaptation? The truth may be far more complex than the simple story of ecocide. Perhaps that is what makes Easter Island so compelling. It is not a puzzle to be solved once and for all. It is a story that changes with each generation. Each discovery, each dream. The Moai stand not as answers, but as questions carved in stone, daring us to look closer, think deeper, and accept that some mysteries will never be fully unraveled. As our journey draws to a close, imagine standing once more on the shores of Rapa Nui. The ocean stretches endlessly, the wind carries the scent of salt and stone, and the Moai rise above you, silent as ever. They have seen centuries come and go, wars, rituals, explorers, tourists, and yet they remain, patient and watchful. What have we learned? We have traced the footsteps of daring voyagers who paddled into the unknown. We have walked among villagers who carved giants from mountainsides. We have felt the awe of moonlit nights, the fear of whispered spirits, the tension of tribal wars, and the resilience of survival. We have explored myths, science, and even aliens, only to discover that the greatest marvel of all is not otherworldly, it is human. And yet, for every story told, countless others remain untold. Easter Island is not finished. New discoveries will come, new theories will rise, and still the statues will stand, waiting for the next generation to ask new questions, to wonder, to dream. As you drift towards sleep tonight, remember this: the mysteries of Rapa Nui are not locked away in the past. They live on in us, in our curiosity, in our longing to understand where we came from and where we are going. The Moai are not just guardians of an island, they are guardians of imagination itself. So let their silence accompany you into your dreams. Let their watchful eyes remind you that history is alive, breathing, and always whispering. Easter Island's secrets are not just about a place, they are about what it means to be human. Thank you for staying with me on this long journey through the mysteries of Easter Island. I hope tonight's story has carried you across oceans, through time, and into the heart of Rapa Nui. If you enjoyed this adventure, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves a good mystery. And now I would love to hear from you. Which part of Easter Island's story fascinated you the most? The daring voyages, the towering statues, the Birdman ritual, or the eerie nights under the Moai? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and tell me, what mystery should we explore together next time? Sleep well, dream deeply, and remember, the past is never silent. It is always waiting to speak if you are willing to listen.